I particularly want to pay tribute to over the 125,000 petitioners who signed the petition and all the almost 200 people in Meriden and Solihull East who also signed the petition. Dr Allingham, as you and every other member in this House is no doubt aware, providing for children with special educational needs is one of the most complex issues facing the country today, and all of our inboxes are inundated with SEND issues from parents needing our support. Indeed, in my own constituency, I want to pay tribute to the parents and all the children who get in touch with me, especially those from Solihull Parent Carer Voice and North Solihull Additional Needs Support Group. Hearing their stories, I know firsthand their anguish, their pain, their anxieties. And look, the SEN system has been struggling under its own weight. It is no secret. We've heard that today over and over again. It would be insincere of me to stand here today and not acknowledge that. And frankly, it'd be disrespectful to the parents that I work with on a daily basis to say otherwise. But I say, in that same spirit of sincerity, I say to all the parties present that this debate will only succeed. We will only achieve better improvement to the system if we all work together and we put parents and children first. Yeah. And to the parties not present here, namely Reform, I think to say that parents have hijacked the system is grossly offensive, and they should apologise. The Conservatives will work constructively, putting children and parents first, but we will also not allow anyone to play politics either. Personally, I lobbied repeatedly the last government for further funding for SEND, and in March 2024, £2.6 billion was allocated to help with SEND school places, and I'm pleased that my own borough, Solihull Borough, received £3 million to support the system. However, with an above-average rate of diagnosis for SEND children, I can attest that much more is needed. The fact of the matter is that the burdens on the system are huge. A growing number of children are now in need of additional support to manage their needs, with a 10.8% increase in the number of children with an Education, Health and Care Plan, or EHCP, as has been often referred to in the last year alone. Many children with SEN rely on the tailored support that an EHCP can provide, setting out binding legal commitments to meet a child's individual needs. However, there has been an unprecedented increase in the number of children needing the HCP since the COVID-19 pandemic, and there is no doubt that ensuring children with SEN should receive the best quality education while also having to grapple with increasing demand, and that is one of the great challenges that is pressing schools at the moment. And I'm sure all of us here today want to ensure that no child loses out on the opportunities that a quality education can provide. But it's not only children with SEND who rely on the tailored support provided through an EHCP, but it's their parents too. That EHCP, when it is secured, provides a written document with statutory backing on which parents can rely. So the Minister should not be surprised to hear, as we've heard today, that many parents have felt blindsided when it unexpectedly emerged that the government would consider scrapping EHCPs. 60% of children with SEND who have an EHCP in place are in mainstream schools. And while ministers have said the government will not remove effective support because of their planned reforms, there has been no clarity from ministers on what exactly the government is providing. So I ask the Minister, for the sake of all the parents who will be watching this debate, what exactly is the government proposing? Who will decide what is effective support? Because if there are no EHCPs, will there be recourse for parents whose children need SEND and don't get that effective or appropriate support? Ministers have repeatedly refused to rule out taking away EHCPs from kids with special needs in mainstream schools, and yet at the same time they are announcing plans to place more children with SEND away from special schools into mainstream schools. So I ask the Minister, how will this work? Does the Minister acknowledge that the government's dithering and delay and confused messaging is hurting parents and it's causing them distress and anxiety? I ask the Minister, don't those parents deserve certainty and clarity? EHCPs must not be taken away from those children with SEND who already have them. Our position is very clear. Despite being repeatedly questioned by my opposition colleagues on whether any parent or child will have the right to support reduced, replaced or removed because of the government's planned changes, ministers have failed to provide any concrete guarantees that this will not be the case. When previously questioned on whether EHCPs would be restricted to only apply to children in special schools, the government's own strategic advisor on SEND said it was still in the middle of the conversation. The government must recognise also the severe financial implications that the lack of clarity on SEN is having on local authorities. Despite increases in funding in recent years worth over £10 billion, it is quite clear that the demand for funding is increasing, not decreasing. EHCPs are also incredibly valuable documents, but they are also very difficult to get. And I acknowledge that there was more to be done on this by the end of the last government, but surely the answer isn't removing them. As with many of the parents I work with, 98% of the cases that go to a tribunal, the tribunal finds in favour of the family. What thoughts and what thinking has the Minister got in improving that decision-making progress to stop parents needing to go to tribunal in the first place? I will happily work with her on the outcomes on this. Can the Minister confirm that they are aware of the severe pressures on local authorities and provide any clarity on what the government are going to do to ensure local authorities remain solvent and not forced into Section 114 notices? Only last week, the Children's Commissioner published her school census and made a number of recommendations to reform the assessments and support for children with SEN, including restricting EHCPs to only those pupils with the most severe needs and creating several different tiers of support for children with SEN. Can the Minister confirm whether or not that this is also the position of the government? Getting this right is of paramount importance. We can see that across the chamber. So has the government got any information of a number of people who are in SEND that will also go on to then be the nearly 1 million young people not in education, employment or training? Has the government got any information on the number of young people that transition from SEND to claiming PIP, for example? Those with the most severe needs must get support from the government, but it's also vital that there are clear pathways for people with SEND to get into work and for all the benefits that come with it. A routine, new friendships and opportunities and the sense of accomplishment that you can get from a hard day's work. Has the Minister or her Secretary of State or her predecessor met with the new or former DWP Secretary of State to discuss this? I recently met with some of the parents, campaigners and lawyers who also took the government to the High Court over the impact of the Education Secretary's decision to impose VAT on independent schools, which included SEND. The Education Secretary's disastrous education tax could impact 90,000 pupils with SEND in independent schools who don't have an EHCP. Specialist state schools could be overwhelmed if these students are forced to relocate to the state sector because parents are being taxed out of education. These calls have been echoed by the head of a specialist dyslexia school in Reigate. Michelle Catterson from the Moon School said that the Labour's disastrous policies could disproportionately impact the state sector. I asked the Minister to share with the House what is the impact on the state sector from children with special educational needs being forced out of the private sector by this government. SEND provision is also being threatened by the government's decision to tax nurseries and other early years providers out of business, and we know that the Chancellor is scrambling to find savings. Can the Minister confirm that no parent or children will have their right to support reduced, replaced or removed because of the Chancellor's need to make the books balance? As was made quite well by my honourable friends from Farnborough and Borden and Keighley and Ilkley, there has been a huge request amongst members for reform of the system. Funding and money will be absolutely essential. Can the Minister tell the House how some of the changes will be funded? If EHCPs are removed, will parents have a statutory document that they can rely on outlining the level of support that their child can expect to receive? And I urge the Minister to use this opportunity to provide much-needed clarity for parents and spell out simply how the government's planned reforms to assessments and support for children with SEND will affect them. Will they today finally announce a publication date for the SEND White Paper that will give members across this House and their constituents the clarity they desperately need? I implore the Minister not to just give us the government lines, but give parents, their children and their teachers the answers that they need.
Minister Georgia Gould.